RX Television on rxmuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, brought to you by Species Nutrition, Liquid Sun Rays, and introducing our new sponsor, Ariel Cuts, and his coaching programs. What is up? My name is Sadiq Faruqi. I'm your host. This is your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. All your questions on diet, training, supplementation, IFBB pros, competitions, drama, whatever it is on your mind, it is all on the table. Speaking of drama, as we now bring in Dave Palumbo. Dave, yesterday, you and Jerry Ward going one-on-one, talking Robbie Robinson, and of course, the bodybuilding world reacted.
Yeah, you know, the great thing about Jerry Ward is I actually like him. We actually like each other, so we get along. So it was a friendly debate. It wasn't like a personal debate, but you know, he had his opinions, I had my opinions. You know, Robbie has a bad reputation with a couple people. You know, from Gold's Gym era, from the Instagram, and I just, you know, I think at this point, you know, at his age, you know, things have to just be dropped at that point. And it was a good back and forth. I made some points, he made some points. We agreed on a few things. And I think that I think there was some closure on the whole thing. Ironically, the next day after we recorded that, I got a phone call from Robbie Robinson. It was a message on my voicemail, and he was thanking me because he had gotten a tremendous response to the video that I did, telling everyone to lay off Robbie and to just celebrate him as the champion he was. And you know, the guy's 71, leave him alone. And he said he had like over 30, you know, phone calls and a lot of people contacting him, you know, from all over the world, you know, showing support. So that made him feel good about himself. And you know what? That made me feel good. He's a guy, he's a little down on his luck. He's not feeling so good. He's obviously the sickle cell's been acting up. And, you know, sometimes you need a nice pick-me-up. And when you hear from the fans and you get a nice positive response, it makes you feel good about yourself. So I felt good about that, doing that.
So again, that episode of Live with Jerry Ward, live right now at rxmuscle.com and the RX Muscle YouTube channel. Let's get right to the questions. Actually, before we go to the questions, if you check our Instagram right now, we held a very impromptu caption contest. Of course, the picture of the black hole surfacing and then, of course, circulating around the internet. So we wanted to come up with the best bodybuilding caption related to the black hole. We will read out some of the best ones later on in the show. The first two questions are from the date.
My caption for the black hole is that's where all the bodybuilders' money goes when they have to buy gear for their contest prep cycle, right into that black hole.
All right, so there's Dave's contribution. We will put that up against some of yours later on in the episode. We'll read them all out and run through the best ones. Dave Palumbo experienced that first question. I know you explained this, but can't find the video. DHT compounds. Can you go over how they work, the whats and whys?
Yeah, I've been getting this question a lot. Now, first of all, the Dave Palumbo Experience app, as you guys might know or not know, is an app that I have. It's $29 a month. You can download it on your iPhone or Android platform. It's basically a place for people to get information. All my videos and every article I've ever written is up on there. I also answer everyone's questions, and all the questions are answered in a public forum, so everyone sees everyone's questions and their answers. I take the best questions. I do an exclusive video, Q&A video every week for the app. Plus, now we're putting workouts up every single week. So you customize workouts. You can try and do different ones every week. People love it. Tell your friends about it. I mean, it's a great little, if you can't afford coaching, or even some of my clients that do coaching still belong to the app. It's like a library on bodybuilding information. Now, you know, people have been asking me about DHT compounds. We all know, or don't know, that certain anabolic steroids are derived from DHT, or dihydrotestosterone, rather than being derived from testosterone. That's Winstrol, Masteron. In other words, they take the DHT molecule, they alter it, and they make these anabolic steroids. What a lot of people don't understand is once they alter that and they change that molecule, the base molecule, the parent compound, it no longer has a lot of the properties of DHT. So in other words, just because DHT may cause hair loss and DHT may cause prostate enlargement, or DHT may cause acne increases or androgenization of a person, it doesn't mean that the compounds that they make from it, like primobolan, okay, are gonna still retain the same DHT properties. Winstrol, they don't. Okay, they don't. Otherwise, women wouldn't be able to take these compounds and without massive side effects. So they've altered the properties of it. So just because, like I said, something is derived from DHT doesn't mean it is DHT. And I think a lot of people have that misnomer. Matter of fact, most of the compounds that are made from DHT have none of the properties of DHT left in them. And the only property that they have is they don't aromatize, a lot of them, or they don't convert to estrogen. So, Masteron is really safe to use, and Primobolan, not for women, but Primobolan is very safe, and Winchell is very safe. And these compounds are found in a lot of, contest prep cycles and some women's cycles because they're very highly anabolic, lower androgenic, and they very rarely have those side effects that we see with DHT. Once again, Masteron is a little too strong, I think, for women to take, although some women do take it. And Masteron has that added benefit of blocking estrogen receptors and in some cases inhibiting prolactin production. So that's why a lot of guys like to use it pre-contest.
Second question, again from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Dave, what do you miss about old school bodybuilding from your era?
I think the training camaraderie. I think that, guys, we all had training partners during the week. On the weekends we would travel to different gyms. Remember, there was no internet back then in the 90s, or no internet that you could actually communicate. People couldn't use their phones to do that. So I would get up early, and I didn't like to get up early. On a Saturday, I would drive out to Jersey, go to Diamond Gym, train there with Jason Arnst or Matt Duvall, and we would make a whole day of it. We'd go train, we'd go eat. Usually we'd eat first, then we'd go train, then we'd eat again, we'd hang out, watch movies. I might go to Strong and Shapely Gym. I would hang out with my friend Dale Flores at that time, and we would spend the whole day together. He'd make food, his wife would cook, and we would talk about steroids and all the other stuff we did. But there was camaraderie there. When I would go to different trips, once again, it was that not only did we go to the Arnold, but we went to the World Gym there down the block, and we would all train there, and we would meet, and we would talk, and we would all exchange ideas. Usually a lot of drug ideas. I miss that. I miss that because it was so important, because there wasn't all this talk on the internet. There wasn't all this jibber jabber. It was like guys getting together and physically seeing each other and discussing what worked, what didn't work, what our theories were on things. And that, I think, is greatly missing from this world, because now everyone just gets on Instagram and argues with each other. And there's really very little science revealed there. Luckily for us, we have YouTube now, and there are people that you can really, watch their videos and say, hey, you know what? I know this guy knows what he's talking about, and you can trust that. But there's a lot of guys that just spout out at the mouth because they want to sound like fucking lunatics, so that people will follow them and they'll get hits on their channel and they'll get coaching gigs, but they really don't know what they're talking about. So it's a different era. The thing I miss, once again, is the in-person, personalized, type of like interactions. And you know what? I'm just as guilty nowadays. I don't talk to anyone. I don't see anyone. I have so many friends. I live 20 minutes from Mel Chansey, who's a great friend of mine. I never see him because, I got 3 kids and this and that. And we'll talk on the phone occasionally. But, back in the day, I'd be taking a ride to his house. He'd be riding out to my house, because that's the only way to communicate with each other, or to see each other. So that's kind of what I think I miss.
Let's go to our Instagram questions. Again, if you're not following us, our handle is official_RX Muscle. Let's go to SS Steve. Dave would rather consume an entire container of Fiberlize. So if you're playing the drinking game at home, bottles up. When dieting down for a show, what is an appropriate amount of weight to lose for someone with a faulty average metabolism, assuming doing a 16-week prep, don't want to gain too much in the off season?
There's no right or wrong to this, because guys with fast metabolisms, can gain more, but usually they don't gain more fat because they have a fast metabolism, but they can lose it fast too. So, you have to know how fast, here's my modicum of what I try to, you could probably lose about 2 pounds of fat per week. Although you'll never lose consistently 2 pounds a week. Some weeks you'll lose more, some weeks you won't lose anything, some weeks you gain. So if you're doing a 16-week contest prep, at 2 pounds per week, you can lose 32 pounds, right? That's usually a pretty accurate, 30 pounds would be a pretty accurate amount of weight that you can lose during that time period. Because the first week or two, you're gonna lose a lot of water weight, and then there's gonna be some stagnation weeks. So, if you're a 225 pound on stage guy, you really don't wanna go over 265, 255, 260 in that area. That's a reasonable amount of weight to lose. Obviously, if you're if you compete at 115 pounds as a woman, you're not going to gain 35 pounds, but although some women do. But once again, that 2 pounds per week is usually a good estimate of what is achievable and what's not achievable.
Let's go to Big Ant. Dave, what is the best way to train around or heal a rotator cuff tear without getting surgery?
You know, I never tore a rotator cuff that I know of during my career, and when I had my shoulder replacements done, they said my rotator cuffs were in pretty good shape. So I always did a lot of these rotator cuff exercises, you know, these movements. I could actually show you now. Hey, I got a shoulder, it doesn't hurt. I used to do all those exercises. I used to do them at least 2-3 times a week, especially right before I would do shoulders or chest, to really strengthen the rotator cuff muscles. So even if you tear one of them or partial one of them, if you overcompensate and strengthen the other ones, okay, they'll compensate and they'll tighten up. Because what the rotator cuff does is it's under your delt and it keeps this ball and socket joint tight. If you're losing some of these rotator cuff muscles, now there's movement here and then you get pain and rubbing and basically instability. So what you want to do is, if let's say you're missing, you know, one strap of it, if you make the other ones tighter and harder and stronger, they'll compensate for the missing, you know, piece. And a lot of guys will get away with, you know, with never getting rotator cuff surgery. The only guys who really usually get rotator cuff repairs are people who have massive tears of the cuff. And unfortunately, you know, if you tear too much of your cuff and the repair surgery doesn't take, because a lot of times it doesn't, you wind up with a reverse shoulder replacement, like I have. And I didn't get it because of a torn rotator cuff, but the reverse shoulder replacement enables you to lift your arm without a rotator cuff. So you don't really want to have to get to that point. So my suggestion is, don't get surgery if you don't need it. Try to strengthen those rotator cuff muscles up. Do the exercises religiously 2-3 times a week.
Dusty Classic Aesthetics. Dave, 3.5 months after PCT, still no sex drive. And then he just puts help. You know,
a lot of guys, you know, they go on a cycle, they have a heightened sex drive, okay? Because more testosterone means you have your sex drive is going to be heightened, you know. When you go off the steroids and you get back to even if you've got your normal production going back in your body from your PCT, it's not going to feel normal anymore. Normal is 1,000 milligrams of testosterone a week. And some guys are searching for that same feeling, and you're not going to get that. You have to understand, you're not going to feel that hypersexual when you're off cycle, okay? You have to, you know, you should still be able to function down there, okay? You know, I never had a problem functioning, but I didn't have the same crazy sex drive I had when I was on cycle. And that just comes into territory. It could take you a year or two of being off drugs completely before you get back to feeling normal. And what'll happen is you'll not that you're going to feel better. You will get a slightly higher sex drive, but you won't have. You'll forget the fact that you were that crazy, you know, heightened sex drive, because that's just not normal. You'll never get that feeling, and if you're chasing that feeling, you'll always be unfulfilled. So you have to accept that there's a difference between being on cycle and off.
Possible Iron Rage subject here from Pat.
Sid, I want to add one more thing to that. Having said that, however, there are people who have very, very low sex drives, you know, that is below. What I recommend for those people is, number one, get blood work done: testosterone, estrogen, prolactin. Also check your DHT levels in your body. Make sure you're not suppressing estrogen or DHT too much. Assuming those are kind of okay, I would recommend using my Testolyze product from Species Nutrition, because that will help balance those estrogen, testosterone, DHT levels. And a lot of times it's the balance of those that will also alter your sex drive. So try that first before you start freaking out and going out of your mind, okay?
So Pat No D-Pat, can you please effing explain why so many people glute bridge 11 plates on the Smith machine, yet they can't even squat 95 pounds to parallel? It's the newest gym fad and is making my blood boil.
Look, in the history of working out, I've seen this even back in my day before there was Instagram. People always lifted too much weight because they wanted it to be a big shot in the gym and have everyone, you know, crowd around and watch them do the weight. I mean, the bottom line is, you know, if you're squatting 600 pounds on a Smith machine but you have terrible legs, who cares? You know, who cares? I had, you know, at my height of my career, I had some of the best legs in any gym I ever walked into. I mean, people would stop and watch, and it didn't matter if I was doing 135 or I was doing 225. People were asking questions, wanted to know what I was doing, because obviously it was working. And granted, I was able to squat a lot of weight because I progressively worked up to it, but it was all because my technique was perfect. I always had a nice wide stance. I always had my heels back. I always, went all the way down. I controlled the weight. I squeezed on the way up, and because of that, my legs grew, and I got really strong because of that, because I used good technique. So, if you want to, stroke your ego in the gym, go right ahead. But the bottom line is, people want to see results, and if you want results, you got to use proper technique. You have to use full range of motion and put your egos to rest. The weight will come when you use good form.
Horton Hierza, sorry for the mispronunciation. Dave, when I competed at nationals, everyone in the super heavyweights and all the classic competitors flattened out and were watered down because of delayed stage timing. We all had to work out of our backpacks, only having rice cakes and peanut butter. My question is, how do you stay full in a situation where you've already peaked early, pumped up, eaten more carbs, then planned, and how do I make sure this doesn't happen in the future?
It's hard. I always tell people, always bring emergency backup food, and, usually when you're backstage, you can kind of find out, when you're going to go on, and just keep eating small amounts. Just keep putting a little bit into your body to keep, because what you're basically doing is at that point, when you're backstage, you're glycogen loaded already, all right? If you're not, then you're screwed, okay? What we're really trying to do is balance blood sugar. I have a lot of guys use rice cakes with all natural peanut butter on it every 15, 20, 30 minutes just to keep their blood sugar up and elevated. The peanut butter obviously is a fat, so it's a little slower absorbing. So you're constantly gonna get a little trickle of blood sugar, of carbs trickling into the blood, and the fat's just delaying that, so that your blood sugar should be stable. I see guys pounding sugary snacks back there, even alcohol. Not a good idea, because like you said, if you get delayed, you get these spikes, and now you're crashing into the basement. Now you're falling asleep because the alcohol is making you tired. Not a good idea. So you're better off being very conservative backstage. I have guys in the morning eating pancakes and eggs. That should be enough to light up their body. Okay. Once you're backstage, you don't want to be doing extreme things back there, because you don't know how long you're going to wait, and you don't know how long it's going to be before you get on stage. I was always the last class to go on, because when I competed, the super heavyweight class was the last to go. At pre-judging, we were the last to go at night in the finals. So you never knew how long you were going to be there. You just had to basically, survive back there, and that's how I learned. Conservative is the best way to go back there.
Vinny Anthony, what are your thoughts on halotestin used before a show, and is it as powerful as people say it is?
Halotestin is no stronger in terms of androgen effect than, say, trenbolone is or anadrol. The advantage of halotestin is that it doesn't aromatize, and it has no anabolic properties. It's just a pure androgen, and as we know, pure androgens help you store glycogen better, so that makes the muscles fuller. Now, for strength athletes, it also increases aggression, that's why the strength athletes use it. But it's very toxic, and it makes you feel crappy. And because it has no anabolic properties, there's no sense in taking it for more than 2 weeks. So we use it the last 2 weeks, usually 20 milligrams per day. Unfortunately, you're going to feel like ass on it for 2 weeks, because it makes you grumpy and miserable. But you look good. To tell you the truth, it was used much more in the 90s before trenbolone became readily available. Because trenbolone was available in the 80s, then it disappeared in the 90s, and then it kind of resurfaced toward the end of the 90s when the veterinary supply of it became available again. Once I started using trenbolone acetate, I never used halotestin again. Nowadays, because it seems to be available, guys use trenbolone and halotestin. In my mind, I think that's overkill. But if you have access to it, it's for 2 weeks, it's not going to kill you.
Let's go to Tractus Iliat Bialis. Now, correct me if I'm mispronouncing it. Acromegaly or acromegaly?
Yeah, acromegaly. Acromegaly.
All right. So, Dave, science question: knowing that patients with acromegaly have a life expectancy of minus 10 years in comparison with healthy human beings, do you think bodybuilders who use GH shorten their lifespan with the same amount of years? So I don't know if what kind of correlation he's trying to draw, but
I understand. Acromegaly is a condition that occurs in people who have tumors of their pituitary gland where they produce copious amounts of GH. So their entire life, they just cranking GH out of their pituitary with no control, which back in the early days would mean it was a death sentence essentially, because what would happen is you'd grow, you'd be like 7-8 feet tall, and then when your bone plates closed, you would continue to grow your organs and your face and your hands, and that's why you've seen some of these, these guys. I mean, Andre the Giant had acromegalia. You can see what he looked like. The problem is that you can't really duplicate that in bodybuilding. No bodybuilder is going to take enough GH, and obviously bodybuilders don't start taking GH till later in their life, so they're not getting the crazy bone growth early in their life. And for most bodybuilders, they're not using it for more than 10 or 20 years, and they're not using even close to the amounts of GH that the body would naturally crank out 24 hours a day. So you'll never see the abnormalities that you see with acromegaly. Although you may see some of the remnants of it. Sometimes you see some facial bone growth. You'll see the hands and the feet sometimes get a little bigger, but nothing compared to what real acromegaly causes. And the real reason a lot of these people die is, quite frankly, either their organs get too big, okay, or they become severely insulin resistant because there's so much GH around, insulin doesn't work, their pancreas burns out, a lot of them become diabetics. I think Andre the Giant was diabetic. And so they get all the side effects of being a diabetic, and so it's like a terrible thing. But nowadays, when kids hit a point where they stop growing, they can remove the tumors in these kids, and a lot of them live normal lives. I believe that, I don't know, there was a wrestler, I don't know if it was Kevin Nash, who had acromegaly, and they fixed it on him or something like that. There was a wrestler who had it, and they fixed it. When he was a teenager, they removed the tumor. But it's you can't equate what bodybuilding is or what bodybuilders are doing to what occurs in nature. It's just not the same thing. Even though we like to say, "Oh, this guy's got acromegaly," or people want to say, "Dave Paloma's got acromegaly." It's foolish to say that, but like I said, that's what people think. They think, oh, too much GH production, well, that's what you're going to get as a bodybuilder. Never happens.
It was the great Khali who had that.
Okay. Yeah, oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, he ended up having a tumor removed. Right. Let's go to Ancient Mason 84. Boxers and MMA fighters dangerously cut water before fights. Andy, I guess he's referencing the techniques that they use. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but he wants to know if any of those techniques can be used safely for bodybuilders while not losing too much muscle.
No, because boxers don't care how they look. They just want to make weight, so they'll dehydrate themselves almost to the point of death. They don't even care because they don't care if their physique looks crappy. And then after they make weight, they can guzzle fluids and hydrate themselves even with IV bags because it doesn't matter if they retain a little water because they're not trying to look a certain way. So it's too extreme. The way us bodybuilders do it is way better. The problem why fighters wouldn't do what we do as bodybuilders is because then it could weaken their fighting skills because we use diuretics, and diuretics really are they can weaken you a little bit. We don't care if we're weak on stage as long as we look good. So different techniques for sports versus bodybuilding.
Frankie C. Extremely bad cramps using clen. After 3 sets of pull-ups, my whole biceps, forearms, and lats cramped up. It was extremely painful, and I couldn't even straighten my arms for over an hour. Still have a sore back and biceps from when it happened 3 days ago. What causes this cramping to be so bad? Is it a lack of potassium?
No, it's not an electrolyte issue. Clenbuterol itself actually makes the muscles contract harder. If anyone's ever taken clen alone, you'll notice it makes you stronger. You actually get stronger in the gym just from taking clen because the muscles are contracting harder. You never want to take, the reason I always tell people to split your dosages of clen in 20 microgram increments is because if you take too much at one time, you'll get a lot more cramping, okay? Likewise, you'll get a much bigger drop in blood pressure, and that will cause the compensation of your heart to beat faster. So more side effects when you take a higher dosage in one sitting. So spread your dosages out over the course of the day. The best way to inhibit the cramping response is to go buy some diet tonic water from the supermarket and drink a couple of ounces of that. The diet version has no carbs in it or any calories. And it's the methylquinine in the tonic water that actually inhibits the cramping process. So that's something that you can definitely do and to avoid that kind of cramping. Taking sodium, potassium, all these electrolytes is not going to solve the problem.
Good question here, and so relevant in terms of contest coverage as far as what it is that we do and other bodybuilding media outlets. From K. Simon L. Stage lighting at various pro shows seems to vary quite a lot based on quality photographs that I see. Has any attempt ever been made to, quote, standardize lighting for pro shows? Doesn't lighting greatly affect the way a physique will look and how posing can manipulate this?
The best lighting guy in the business was Mike Nevue from Iron Man magazine. Mike would set up, they used to have an Iron Man Pro show years ago. It was always the first show of the year. And they would set the stage up with the black backdrop. The lighting was so perfect. The best pictures ever are from those Ironmans. Ask Flex Wheeler where his best pictures were taken. Ironman Pro stage. All the top bodybuilders would just do the show just to get the pictures from there, because they knew how to light a stage. And I once talked to them about this. I said, how come these promoters at the Arnold and the Olympias, how come they don't hire you to do the stage lighting? He's like, I don't know. I've offered to do it. No one wants to hire me. But here's one of the problems, though. Lighting a stage for photos is different than lighting a stage for video. So most of these stages are lit for video coverage, especially when you're live streaming a show, and that's just not the best way to shoot pictures. And so that's why I think it's a good idea sometimes if the pre-judging maybe is lit for photos with a black backdrop so we get the best photos, and then the night show they could light for, for entertainment purposes and for TV. That's what I think. Matter of fact, now that you mentioned that, it might even be a good idea to call my good friend Dan Solomon up, who's now running the Olympia, and have him maybe reach out to Mike Nevue for some help with lighting the stage, for the pre-judging. To me, at the pre-judging, there shouldn't be a lot of distraction behind you. There should be a black background with tremendous light on the athletes in the right way. And you have to know how to light people. You can't just flood them with tons of light. You have to know angles and where the light should be coming from, and that's why a great photographer can set up the stage. And once again, I've never seen a better stage lit than what Mike Nevue would do with that Iron Man.
91 JDG, what to do to get rid of patella and quadriceps tendinitis?
You got to find out what's causing it. A lot of times, it's misalignment of your feet. It's the biomechanics of your feet are off. And that's why I always tell people, if you're really serious about bodybuilding, every single person should go get custom orthotics, which are the inserts you put in your shoes, made from your podiatrist or chiropractor. You get your custom orthotic custom made to your feet, you put them in your sneakers, you wear them all the time. This way, when you're squatting and you're doing anything on your feet, the biomechanics are perfect and you're not going to get rubbing in areas you shouldn't be getting it. Groin, lower back, and knees. As soon as I've been wearing orthotics for 35 years. As soon as my orthotics start to break down, and they only last about 2.5 to 3 years max, then you should really get another pair. I start getting knee pain immediately when I would do any kind of leg movements, and it's because my alignment's off. Now my feet are off. If your feet are off, the whole rest of your body's off. So if you're serious and you do weigh a lot, because as you start putting muscle on, you're going to weigh more and more, which is going to amplify this effect of the misbalance of your feet. You have to get orthotics. It's just standard equipment as far as I'm concerned.
We have so many questions. We're not going to get to all of them. We're only going to take a couple of more. We're up against the clock. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to save some of these questions. I'm going to send them to Dave. We could either use them on next week's episode or the ones that Dave wants to do an individual rant on. We could approach it in that way. Let's go to Excellent 107. Dave, why do pro bodybuilders use simple carbs even in prep while dietitians and coaches recommend complex when dieting? Is it down to the gear that they use that doesn't make a difference for them? Or is there something else?
Recently I've been doing a lot of experimenting. I find that sometimes when you're giving people very small amounts of carbs pre-contest, that sometimes the faster acting, the higher glycemic carbs are better. I almost like white rice and white potatoes pre-contest rather than the oats and the brown rice for certain people. It just seems to pop their metabolism a little faster and it kind of boosts things up. Remember, you're eating small amounts, so it doesn't really matter if you're eating faster or slower, glycemic carbs, because they're all getting stored as glycogen. So I think that, in an off-season scenario, however, if you start eating a lot of high glycemic carbs, you tend to get fatter easier because you're overdoing the carbs. And we know we're overdoing the carbs because we want to do that to ensure that we're not using we're not using protein and fats as fuel. We want to use those to build muscle. So pre-contest, you can get away with higher glycemic carbs. And once again, some people respond better to them. Whereas off-season, try to find the lower glycemic carbs, the oats and the whole grain pastas and the sweet potatoes and the brown rices.
Let's go to Philip Rowe. For advanced natural bodybuilders, personally over 8 years of training, how much muscle gain in a year is a realistic gain? My guess is about 1 kilogram. I'm not sure exactly what that equates to in pounds.
That's 2.2 pounds. I don't like putting numbers on anything, to tell you the truth, because people told me I couldn't gain more than 15 pounds a year, and I gained 25 pounds in 1 year. So don't put numbers on yourself. Don't limit. As soon as you put a number on something, you've immediately limited yourself in your mind, and you're not going to grow past that. So that's not smart. When you first start out training, whether you're natural or on gear, you're going to gain much more muscle, okay, initially, if you're training right, eating right, and sleeping and resting enough. Okay, at some point you're going to max your body out, whether it be natural or on gear, and it's going to be harder to put muscle on, and quite frankly, you might not need to put any more muscle on. But initially, in the initial stages of training, the first 5 years, you should be able to pack a lot of muscle on. I went from 145 pounds as a runner in college to 215 pounds naturally. I did that in about three years maybe. And then I gained another 100 pounds of muscle, okay, in the next 5 years, okay, unnaturally. But if I would have asked someone, they probably would have said that's impossible to do. Okay, but I did it. So don't let, and then I see people who put on a fraction of that. And I don't know if it's because they just genetically can't do it, they can't eat enough, they don't have a good enough metabolism. I don't know. Everyone's different. Don't put limits on yourself. People always ask me, Dave, how much weight should I gain this off season? I'm like, 1,000,000 pounds. Don't put a limit on it, because as soon as you do, you've just capped off how much you're going to grow.
Squeeze in a couple of more. Do you think bodybuilders should track the heart variability to optimize performance and stay in a parasympathetic state?
Say that again.
So
That's even complicated for me.
So you know what? I'm going to save that one for a rant question, because they're talking about heart variability rate, I guess, with the trackers and so on and so forth. You want to say that, and we'll go to another question?
They want to know about that with regard to cardio or with regard to weight training?
Just in terms of optimizing performance.
I don't think, first of all, cardio for bodybuilders should not be super high intensity, okay? You're not trying to train for a marathon. You're not trying to get your heart in shape. You're trying to look good, okay? So that's a big mistake. Now, when you're squatting 600 pounds for 4 or 5 reps, your heart rate's going to go really, really high. Why? Because weightlifting is a high intensity activity, but it's a short burst of activity like that. So don't even worry about your heart rate, okay? And, unless you have a heart issue where you can't raise your heart rate a certain amount.
Well, Dave, I just wanted to jump in real quick.
Yeah.
Dave, I'm sorry. So they specifically mention tracking performance to make sure that they're in a parasympathetic state.
I don't even know how you would do that, to be honest with you. And I don't even know what the purpose of that would be. So it sounds like phony baloney to me.
All right, let's go to Hayden52. The difference between taking a carb powder post-workout versus like a cream of rice.
You can get away with both. The reason we do like my Carbolize and Isolyze, and other people have other high molecular weight carbs and Isolyze and isolates, is because they're very rapidly absorbed. They don't need really any digestion. They're already powdered in liquid form. You drink them down, they're in your bloodstream in 10, 15 minutes, and they're being absorbed. So cream of rice, while it's a faster carb, it still needs to be digested. It's going to take longer. You might as well just eat a meal at that point if you're going to do that. So there's nothing wrong with that. I've left the gym and gone and eaten a meal, rather than had a shake. But when I was in my main focused muscle building mode, okay, where I wanted to maximize gains, I always did a post-workout shake. And then, I knew I could take a deep breath and take my time, and my next meal would come anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes after that shake. So that's just how you do it. Why? Because you want to get the nutrients in as quickly as possible.
Merce Brown. Now, I'm not sure if we've asked this direct question, but I'm sure you've discussed it in other forums. Merce Brown, aside from Flex Wheeler, who do you think the top 5 bodybuilders are to never have won the Sandow? So I guess out of Flex Wheeler, your top 5 uncrowned Mr. Olympias.
Levrone, Nasser. I really love Cormier's physique. I think Cormier could have been a Mr. Olympia. If he was competing nowadays, he certainly would have been a Mr. Olympia probably. physique-wise. But I think that Levrone, I think Sean Ray too. I'd have to, as much as Sean and I battle it out, Sean's physique was good enough to be Mr. Olympia. Today he would have been Mr. Olympia probably, if he was competing in this day and age. He was really that good when he competed. I don't think Labrada was big enough to be Mr. Olympia, so I wouldn't put him in that category. Trying to think from back in the way back era, who never won the Olympia. Mike Mensa could have been an Olympia. I would have loved to see Lou Ferrigno as a Mr. Olympia. I think in his day, if he hadn't taken off that 10, 15 years to do the Incredible Hulk TV show, he would have been Mr. Olympia. But I have to think Levrone, Paul Dillette could have been Mr. Olympia too, if he knew how to pose. He had the physique for it, for sure. There was a lot of great guys from that era that could have been Mr. Olympia that never made it because of the fact that they were going up against machines in Dorian Yates and Ronnie Coleman. They monopolized that whole era, and people just couldn't beat them. They were just too good and too consistent.
Let's get to the black hole topic. I want to get Tyler in on this as well. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to run. So again, earlier today we held a little impromptu caption contest. Your best caption with bodybuilding and that black hole image is going around the internet right now. Science finally got an accurate picture of the black hole. Finally got an idea what it looks like. It does in fact look like a donut. So I'm going to run through some of them. Mungo June, it's Steve Black Hole.
Steve Blackhole.
Barbarian Training looks like it's holding water. Half a diazide will fix it. Stu Post 89, what it feels like I'm falling into after taking Pilo Sarsev's insulin protocol. Smiler Pereira, don't let this happen to you. Use Fiberlize.
Oh.
R Cook 22 looks like trying to get Sky Green to give a straight answer to a question. CP Fow 88. This week's headline: first images of a black hole captured. Next week headline: black hole threatened via lawsuit by Jeremy Buendia.
Yeah. That was my personal favorite, Sid.
Jamil K, still less massive than Ronnie Coleman. All right. Bodybuilder Bear, estimates place it at billions of times the sun's mass or one Ronnie Coleman. Credit Wikipedia. Matt Sino, check out the vacuum on that black hole. And my personal favorite, oh my God, from Dave Harris, 87, what the grapefruit looks like after.
That's not nice. That's terrible.
All right, Tyler, your favorite.
Oh, you already said it.
The lawsuit one?
It was the first week headline. We got the black hole next week. Jeremy is suing it. Black hole threatened via lawsuit.
Dave, your favorite.
Yeah.
I like the what's left of MD one. That was pretty good too. I thought that was pretty creative.
Do you like that one or Steve Blackhole?
Steve Blackhole.
Steve Blackhole, yeah.
I'm going to go
You like my Lift Ugly shirt? This is a new clothing company that I'm friends with the owner and I'm involved in a little bit. It's a prototype.
Sweet.
It's the saying. All this shirt's going to be Lift Ugly. There's actually a Dave Palumbo Lift Ugly 2 caricature. So don't ask me where you can buy them yet. They're not available yet. I'm just kind of just showing it off a little bit.
I'm going to go with Dave Harris, 87, what the grapefruit looks like after. So great job, and thank you for all that participated. That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Again, brought to you by Species Nutrition, Liquid Sunrays, and our new sponsor,
Ariel Cuts.
Ariel Cuts. I was thinking of something else. Ariel Cuts coaching programs. Dave, you've known him for quite some time now, so we finally got him on board here on rxmuscle.com. Check him out. Ariel Cuts, growing leaps and bounds on that West Coast bodybuilding scene. So again, we thank you, Ariel Cuts, for joining us on Ask Dave. For Dave Palumbo and Tyler Shore, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next week.